Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, back again with another program of Getting Things Done. Tonight I will be talking about the teachers and educators in the community because of the current emphasis on saving costs by attempting to move 7th and 8th grade to Gilbert or vice versa. I've been to all the meetings. And when I had my last program or two on, I did have a lot of Democrats approach me on the street or on the phone and ask me why I was singling out the Democrats so often as leadership as being negative for the town of Winsted. And I explained it to them. And once I explained it to them, almost all of them agreed with me. And some asked me to do a special program. So that's what you see tonight. The apple you see is for the teachers. When we were kids, we used to bring an apple to the teacher. I don't know if that still happens, but here's an apple for all you teachers. Tonight is going to be addressed to you, and I may show it again next week and I may not, depends what happens in town, but tell all the other educators to tune in. If you're sitting there now near the phone, call some of them and tell them to watch the program for the next hour. So again, getting things done. We have one more guest tonight, and that's 2 pages, the cost-saving pages of the green paper that I had submitted to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, EDC, Water and Sewer Commission, just about everybody, including the 3 PTOs. I made one mistake when I handed this paper out in 2006. I didn't include the teachers' unions. I should have done that because maybe I would have got some response from them. So tonight, those are the guests, the apple and the green paper. I will read parts of the green paper to you, the education parts. Educators, this is addressed to you. Tonight's program. The town leadership over the years, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, has let you down terribly. They've really let you down. Tonight's program is especially directed to the teachers and union leaders at Pearson, Bachelor, and Hinsdale schools. I went to the last 3 meetings, plus a couple other Board of Education meetings in the last week or two, and I heard the teachers speak from Pearson, and I heard the town people speak, and they were very interesting. There were even some students there. So I heard all the feedback to the Board of Education from these 3 meetings that were held last week. I was at all 3 meetings, beginning to end, sad to say, because some of them last past my bedtime. This is also addressed to the leaders and members of the 3 parent-teachers associations that I know of. Maybe there's a 4th. I don't know if Gilbert has one or not, but if they do, this is addressed to them too. The members of the Board of Education, past and present. The last Board of Education, before this one, administration, was quite a problem for you teachers. The teachers, administrators, and the teachers union at the Gilbert School, it's addressed to them. The Town of Winchester Board of Finance. The members of the Taxpayers Association of the Town of Winchester. The members of the Economic Development Commission, EDC, of the Town of Winchester. The residents of the Town of Winchester, especially those that have children in the school system. The members of the Democratic Party, especially those that are not in the minority, that seems to be controlled by the former Indocrats and the current mayor of the town of Winchester. I want to especially emphasize that. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat registered. I vote with the people I think would do the best for the town. And in some cases, some of the members of the current Democratic Party are doing somewhat of a reasonable job, one and a half of them. But it's hard for me to ally with a party that says one thing and does another, or says one thing and has a different hidden agenda. It's very hard for me. But I want everybody to know that the Democratic Party is not my problem. It's only a small minority within that party that seems to have taken over control prior to the last election. And they grew out of the Indocrat group that was attempting to take control of the party, which they finally did after the last election. And the Board of Education. So this tonight is addressed to all you people. That's why I think I'll repeat it again next week, because I want you to get a chance to tell everybody. Because after I get done with this program, somebody will show up at one of the newspapers with something good to say about these people, trying to redress this. Happens after every one of my programs when I talk about them. Something will pop up. We'll talk about one of them tonight. The town of Winchester and some members of the Democratic Party and their supporters have really let the school system down. There is no doubt about that. In June of 2006, I approached the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, the Economic Development Commission, EDC, amongst many other groups in town, in the wetlands, planning and zoning, etc., Friends of Main Street, and presented them with a copy of my green papers that I did after a few years of study of the town of Winchester. I did these papers and presented these papers, first of them, in June of 2006. The green papers, of which a copy is available in the town clerk's office, stress the importance of an opportunity that the town leaders had at the time to add a substantial amount of additional, profitable, recurring tax revenue to our grand list. Everybody knows we need that. Profitable means that the taxes will produce more for the town to spend on other activities and projects than it costs the town to support the particular taxpayer. We have some taxpayers who pay a huge amount of money and cost the town almost nothing because they live out of town most of the year, have no children in the school system, etc., etc. So, tax revenue to our grand list over the following several years, from 0 to 10, some of which have gone by already without any growth in that area, that if used wisely, this money could be used to help to fund most of our projects over many years to come, one way or another. And that would include the school, capital, and expense needs for a good time to come. This year's capital budget, as you know, the K through 8 group is already overspent on the fiscal 9-10 budget, although the jury's still out on how much. You hear different versions. Up to a few days ago, I still heard a different version, so we still don't know for sure. An FOI has been put out for the information by the town to get all the documents to find exactly what's happening over there in the K through 8 part of the school system. We also have the schools just put in on the capital plan for the next 5 years, $32 million, about $10 million for each of the 3 schools that are in their jurisdiction for capital improvements. That's quite a bit of money. That's $2 million a school times 5 times 3. We're talking about $30 million there for that. These papers are available in a town hall. Contact the town manager's assistant and you can get a copy. Although the papers that I wrote, the green papers, stress the need for this revenue, and I want to point out to you that the main object of my papers was to stress the need for this additional profitable recurring tax revenue that the town needs, not on reducing costs. There are other people in town, 5 or 6 different groups, including the Taxpayers Association, trying to keep costs under control. So I didn't feel that that was the answer to this problem. That's part of the answer. So I included in my green papers 2 pages on cost savings. So the document included 2 pages outlining possible cost-saving measures that could help the town until the additional recurring revenue was obtained, if ever. So far, it hasn't been. It's been going down, not up. I will now read a couple excerpts from my 2006 green papers. I have them in a lighter shade of green so that perhaps you can see them on the camera. Apologize if you can't. But in my green papers, I had several ideas for cost savings that I discussed with many people in town that were in leadership positions in the past and in the present. And these 2 pages reflect all the ideas that I collected while studying the town from various people of all parties and including the non-affiliated people, which is 2/3 of the voters in town, probably, maybe a little less, but not much, probably 60%. So the first point I mentioned, and pay attention teachers on this, and administrators in the school system, this comes from the green papers that I addressed to the selectmen and gave a copy to the Board of Education and other groups in town. I ask you to go to the town manager, who was then Owen Quinn, and ask him to help you prepare a joint plan with milestones that will save you and the town money eventually by overlapping costs, by combining services such as sharing personnel, computer services, and whatever else you can think of with a town, between the town and Gilbert, over the intermediate to long run. And by the town, I mean K through 8 as well as the town budget. For example, if you had one superintendent instead of 2, if you had one financial director for the town and the schools instead of 3, if you had one computer system for the town and the schools instead of 3 or 4, and it goes on and on. The recent town manager has re-emphasized these points and until he resigned anyway, was trying to make all this happen. And you've probably seen some of that on the Board of Selectmen meeting. And whatever else you can think of with the town of Gilbert over the intermediate to long run, I already said that, but I want to point out that this was 2006, and it's been going on for about 15 years. People, my predecessors in town leadership over the years, have been saying the same thing and pushing very hard on Channel 13 and everywhere they can to try to get efficiency into our school system. And up till now it hasn't happened. And then the fourth point was ask the town manager, Owen Quinn at the time, and I did give him a copy of my green papers as well, for help in preparing a plan with milestones with Gilbert for sharing as much as practical between the town, which includes K through 8, and Gilbert. Try to include any resolutions in the new contract, as these three groups should be a happy family and always work together as a team, each one trying to do the best for all. Now, if you had gone to the 3 meetings that I went to this week, you wouldn't have seen any of that in 2010. Nevertheless, 2006 when I wrote the papers. And unless something's done about all this by the Board of Education, Gilbert School, and the town leaders, in 10 years you'll be hearing the same thing if we survive that long without the state taking us over. So that's what I wrote in the green papers, and I passed it out to everybody. The revenue opportunity that I mentioned in my green paper as an example, it was a huge revenue opportunity from 0 to say 6 or 7 million over the next 10 years, most of which would be profitable revenue. Plus we would have, the developer would have run a pipeline down the Enterprise corridor for water and sewer to almost the Torrington town line, about $5 million worth of investment for that, maybe a little less. But this revenue opportunity has now been delayed, if not drastically reduced or lost for a good number of years. Listen hard, teachers. We had a big chance here around the 2004, 5, 6 time frame to get this big development in that would have been very profitable in many ways for this town. And if we had done it, we probably wouldn't be in this pickle we're in today. I was giving no guarantee on that because other things did happen. When I did the green papers and did my study of the town, the following organizations agreed with the revenue approach, providing it wasn't going to create a great deal more cost for the town than the taxes that it paid to the town. Some agreed proactively. They got out and tried to help and make it work. And one of the people at the time that, and before the time, that was interested was Kathy O'Brien, at that time the chairman of the Board of Education. She wanted to see this happen, even though many members of her party did not. The next election, we had a different chairman of the Board of Education, and that's who I delivered my papers to. So I backed Kathy O'Brien, and so did the Republicans in the last election, because she was trying to help the town succeed in getting more additional, profitable, recurring revenue that partially could be spent to solve the problems in our school system. We still would have to get the costs under control and run efficiently. But this would have provided a lot, and that's outlined in my green papers if you want to go get a copy and read them. I forget what percentage I gave to the school, but I allowed some percentage of the additional new taxes to go to the teachers and some to go to the capital costs. You'd have to look at the paper, and by the way, they were just examples. The town could choose its own numbers, as I said in the papers. So I put a P next to the people here that supported this in a proactive manner. The Republican Party was the leaders in this whole charge for many years. And prior town leadership, prior to the Indocrats that came in 3 administrations ago, were very active at all the meetings, presenting papers, getting up and speaking, attending the meetings, and trying to get the town to understand how important it was to get this project into town and to work and be business friendly, even though a lot of obstacles were presented by the developers. There's no arguing about that. But you have to get in and work with them. And I did explain that to the town manager when I saw him at the beginning of his term. And I think he made some sort of effort. But the time has changed now, and there are a different set of circumstances. That's why I say we may have lost this opportunity, or we may have reduced its profitability by a great deal. And it may never happen. The next group was the Winchester Taxpayers Association. They proactively supported this project, providing it didn't have more cost to the town than benefit to the town. They made that very clear, their leadership at the time. They wrote letters to the paper, and they spoke positively about it on various Channel 13 programs. And they're to be commended for that. So don't blame them for all the problems we have in the school systems. We've had an average of 4% increase in taxes over the last 10 years or so, give or take a little. The Economic Development Commission, the EDC, they supported this project. But I didn't put a P next to them because they weren't proactive. They didn't get out and beat the drums, write letters, appear on TV, and push the project. They took more of a, we can't get involved in politics approach. And this is not politics, as I always say on this program. This is business. And teachers, you now know that because you are being severely affected, have been for a few years, and will be for a few more, by this lack of understanding at the time. The independent party was in favor. I went and talked to them, and they were in favor. Again, providing it brought pretty much profitability to the town and not additional costs. The Water and Sewer Commission, I went and talked to them. They showed up at many meetings. Their chairman, Richard Nillette, Sr., and was very positive about getting this development into our town because it would help them with their problems, getting more money for water and sewer. There's $1,000 a hookup for each one, and there were like 800, 750 houses up there or something at that time. And they were fairly upscale houses with a golf course and a clubhouse. They got changed a little over the years, but watered down a bit, but was still very profitable for the town. And adding the water and sewer down the corridor on Old Route 8 between Winston and Torrington would allow more businesses to occupy that land down there. There are 2 problems down there. One is it's hard to get industry in there because you need the water for the required sprinkling systems in industry. And because we have a lot of ledge down there, it's hard to do septic systems, so you need a sewer to go down there to be able to develop those lands for industry. And not all of it would be for industry, but some of it, hopefully more of it. Because industry produces a lot of jobs, and it produces a lot of additional, recurring, profitable tax money, especially in the personal property tax area, which is almost all gravy. and can be plentiful in some companies. In a few weeks, I'll go over that list with you, and I'll show you some examples. Of course, they'll also pay real estate taxes. Some of those could be pretty hefty as well, depending upon who goes in the area. The PTOs, surprisingly, when they received my letter, did not even reply. Here's something that would have really helped the teachers, and this is the parent-teachers, I guess, organization. They showed no interest whatsoever, didn't even answer my letter that I sent directly to them. They're filed in the town hall in my green papers. At that particular point, I think if I had it to do over, I would have sent it to the PTOs and the union leaders. And maybe I could have got some response from the union leaders to stir up the Board of Education and get some help from them. The Democratic Party was in the process of fracturing. The leadership at the time was losing steam, and a different group of people headed by the current and one of the previous town managers was in the process of taking over the party, which they did after the last election. They were in the minority before that. And they did not take a stand publicly. I went to talk to them. One of the selectmen at the time, the current mayor, didn't even show up for the meeting. The other selectman, who was mayor, showed up for about half the meeting and proved a bit difficult. There was considerable opposition to this revenue opportunity by a small number of people allied to the Democratic Party. Notice I don't say the whole Democratic Party, just a small group that was in the process of taking over the party. And their former independent party associates who had dropped out of the independent party and were working closely with the leaders of the Democratic Party, the two selectmen that were Democrats. So there was considerable opposition to this revenue opportunity by a small number of people allied to the Democratic Party in one form or another, either Indocrats or Democrats, and a few from other areas like non-affiliated, or maybe even the Green Party, I don't know. That included two extremely negative Democratic mayors concerning this project. Ironically, both educators, isn't that ironic? This is the biggest opportunity this town will see in another 20 years, and probably in the last 20 years, to get some profitable, additional, recurring tax revenue for our school system. And the biggest problem were the two educators in the Democratic Party that were selectmen, and one was mayor at the time, the other is the new mayor. There were other people too. The other people were the ex-members of the Independent Party that quit the Independent Party in a huff and went off and ran again, lost, and then came back as Democrats in the last election and won. They were against this tremendous opportunity. Now, again, I want to point out to you teachers, you should know this, you're teachers and educators and administrators that help all these people. This was one of the best opportunities you're ever going to see, because they walked into our town and asked us, begged us to come to town. And our former town leaders encouraged them to do so and talked them into adding a golf course, which they didn't want to do in the first place. When the Indocrats were in power 3 administrations ago, not this one, not the last one, but the one before that, in my opinion, they stonewalled the revenue, and I'm pretty close to this. I go to most of the meetings on these things, efforts by the developers, and refused to sell the developers a required small parcel of town owned property adjacent to their 600-acre property along the Enterprise Corridor near Highland Lake. 600 acres. Got quite a bit of money invested there. Now, I want to say to you that I, as a businessman, would never have put myself in that position. I wouldn't have come to the town and asked to develop 600 acres, including a piece that I did not own. But for one reason or another, as an oversight or whatever, they thought they did include a couple acres, an acre or two, that they didn't own. So they petitioned to the town to buy the property. The town, Indocrats, refused to sell them the property, probably worth about $30,000. And all this was done despite the fact that experts from Yale, and I heard the lady speak a couple times, had given the following testimony: that the development would not hurt Highland Lake. And our own experts that were hired by various town organizations, in the end, had to agree with them, to the best of my knowledge, but did convince them to put in some measuring points around so that we could see if anything different was happening once it was developed than was promised during the planning board sessions. So the development was testified by experts, and we couldn't prove otherwise, over a long period of time, development would not hurt Highland Lake. You can find that in the records of the Planning and Zoning Commission or in the wetlands, whichever one has that particular papers in it. The development would not hurt the Canavo Spring. That was another big concern because a lot of people up around that area still use the Canavo Spring. And they like to drink that water. Some don't even have wells up at Highland Lake, in the Highland Lake District. So they go there to get their drinking water and water for other purposes. The development would not hurt the many wells that exist around Highland Lake. There are a lot of wells around Highland Lake, between Kenny Pratt's property and all the way down a Perch Rock Trail. They're mostly wells, or they use water from the lake for all purposes except drinking. So plenty of those around the lake. So the experts said that development would not hurt the many wells that exist around Highland Lake. Following the Indocrats' refusal to sell the land to the developer, the 1 or 2 acres, whatever it was, a petition was raised by the Republicans in the minority at the time. But they could not gather enough public support to request a reversal of the decision at the required town meeting. Now, I'm not quite sure how this works, whether the town meeting could have reversed it or they would have had to go back to the selectmen and say, look, we, the town meeting, suggest that you sell the land. But I'm pretty sure that it's one or the other. Now, shame on you. Because you would have benefited, you educators and teachers and administrators, by supporting the Republicans at that time, no matter what party you belonged to or didn't belong to. Because that was a great, great opportunity for this town. And again, if I was a developer, I wouldn't have got in that pickle. But when you're trying to have a symbiotic relationship and be developer friendly, those are the kind of things you have to do along the way to keep the pot boiling and get the town moving and get that revenue into town. It's not a them against us against them proposition. It's let's all work together type proposition, which of course they did not do, but are now asking other people to do. The decision forced the developers to withdraw their plans, pay a lot of money to update them, and to resubmit them to the town planning commissions, where they again met stiff opposition by a minority of environmentalists who often behaved unprofessionally at related town meetings, jumping up and down, waving signs, yelling and screaming, saying mean things, that kind of thing. While the developer was replanning, the tsunami disaster occurred in New Orleans. And reportedly, according to the developer, that caused the Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, and the Army Corps of Engineers to stiffen their necessary approval requirements. Now, had this been approved by our town to sell the land to the developer, they might have come in before these stiffer environmental protection rules were put in place. Not saying they're not needed, but there'll be new ones next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. And we can't wait for all of them. So we got to keep moving here in our town. Soon after we had the greatest recession, after the tsunami, we had the greatest recession since the Great Depression, and revenues for education and other town needs began to dry up. The people in New York were making big bucks, were making less, therefore paying less taxes in Connecticut. Town revenues began to go down. Our revenues have gone down over the last 2 or 3 years. Town revenues, people don't get as many building permits. They don't spend as much money at the town clerk's office for various things that are needed down there, etc. So if you look at the town records, you'll see that we've been in town. We know the state has been having trouble, and we know certainly the federal government has been having trouble. And as you probably know, educators, teachers, and administrators, we did get some money from Obama for one reason or another to the tune of about $1.5 million to try to tide us through this problem. However, that money is not recurring, profitable additional tax money, and will soon dwindle if not go away altogether. Meanwhile, we are spending at the rate that includes that money. We are also overspending at that rate. We may have, if the facts prove it out, have overspent by close to $500,000 in fiscal 9-10 in the K through 8 education budget. Not good. We've got a lot of problems in that area. 4 directors, financial directors over the last 4.5 years. Not good. A lot of trouble getting information there. A lot of problems. So at the very time when we could afford to have these problems the least, we don't have the extra additional recurring profitable tax revenue that we most likely would have gained from those developments along the corridor had we helped them in a more positive, professional manner, and if all you people had spoken up. Some of you were probably there when I presented my green papers, maybe not. Lack of attention by these town growth dissenters along the way has placed the town in a very difficult additional profitable recurring revenue position, as there is not much hope for a major increase in that area for the foreseeable future. Our revenue projections for the next 5 years, as you know from watching my programs, Planning for Success, quarterly reviews, is still a blank sheet of paper. I've had some very important people in the town recently say to me, Brian, this town does not want to grow. A lot of influential people in this town do not want to grow. Meanwhile, we're losing students. Students are going off to other places. Students are quitting school before graduation. Requirements for getting a job are getting tougher and tougher for these students. Demands from the federal government and the state government and our own area are getting tougher. So we need this. We can't get it all by cutting expenses. I always draw an analogy to your own home. You can only cut expenses so far. Many people around the world have come to me and asked me how they can improve. Some of them were Yale graduates, Harvard graduates. How could they improve their own personal profit and loss? And I could always find a way to help them to a certain percentage. After that, it would require a significant lifestyle change or ambition. So the dissenters along the way have placed the town in a very difficult additional recurring revenue position. There's not major hope for a major increase in the foreseeable future. These dissenters, and I want you to know this, I mean, that's what our democracy is all about. Somebody like me has to get up and say these things. It's a little easier for me than others because I don't have a profession in town. I'm retired and have my own financial resources. So I can speak up, and I'm doing that to you. Many people will tell you, I don't know what I'm talking about, and that the projects were so bad that we shouldn't have let them come to town, and we don't really need them. But I don't agree with them. I think we have to work with people who want to come to town, listen to their needs, and then try to meet them, and not cry when after much cajoling they decide to leave our town and go to more greener pastures, more business-friendly environments. They all like the town itself, but they find it hard to conduct business here. The dissenters including the last two Democratic mayors, the present one and the one in the Indocrat 2 administrations ago mayor, have placed the town in an impossible position. And the voters, in my opinion, have mistakenly placed them in the majority of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, despite my warnings prior to the election. Where they will continue to do, and are probably continuing to do, damage. And continue to be defiant. Continue to say one thing and do the other, if anything at all. There are a couple exceptions. Maybe 1.5 of the 4 Democrats in control. But they are packing the Planning and Zoning Commission, in my opinion, with people that believe in their approach to very slowly growing the town, if at all. And as a result, they will continue to let you down. Now, meanwhile, in the existing administration, and you can see it for yourself on TV, Channel 13, during the selectmen meetings and some of the other meetings they televise, special selectmen meetings. You can see it in the Board of Education meetings and other televised Channel 13 meetings. The Republicans, and remember, I'm not a Republican, I'm unaffiliated and will vote for whoever helps us to grow this town and get into a financially balanced situation and continue to do so and do it proactively. And in this administration, it happens to be the Republicans. And that's what I tell everybody, any Democrat or any unaffiliated person or any Republican who corners me on the street or phones me. That's what I tell them. And then what I do is I show them how we can improve our lot. What I do is I show them a list of the top 25 personal property taxpayers in the town of Winchester. Just the top 25, not the whole list of personal property taxpayers. Now, what personal property taxpayers are, for example, take Howmet. It's an industrial company in town that pays real estate taxes at a very high level. It's mostly profitable to the town. And they pay personal property taxes. And those personal property taxes are paid for the lathes that they own, the milling machines they own, the trucks they own, the cars they own. Any piece of equipment, as I told you once on this program before, barbers pay for clippers and combs and whatever else they have on their inventory. And that's all very, very profitable to the town. Now, the people that are trying to slow growth will tell you, oh, we have to do the POCD. We have to finish that before we really push where there's more profitable, recurring, additional tax revenue. I say, no, you don't have to do that at all. Most of the people who have come into town have done it despite us not having an updated POCD in the last 10 years or so, maybe 16. I don't know, I can never remember the exact number. But Howmet's here. There are plenty of people here. We have people here that pay over $40,000 in home taxes. That's mostly profitable for them because they don't have children in the school systems and they don't live here most of the year. One of them pays them over $60,000. The other pay close to $50,000. They didn't need a new POCD to come into town. So what I would advise the EDC to do, and I have been talking to individuals about it, is go get some more Howmets. Go get some more people that will come to town. Now once the POCD is done, someday, most people in other towns say it won't make much difference. But once that's done, maybe it'll help a little. But it's a long way off before they get the POCD done and get the regulations changed. Teachers, educators, and administrators in the school systems. They're a long way from helping you if they follow their course, which may even get reversed by a future group, hopefully, in town. So that's what should be done. We should be out there trying to get the people to town that will come. Another excuse I get from people that want to grow the town is we have such a bad reputation in Winchester, especially in the town of Winstead. I don't agree with that. We all know we got not too good a reputation. But that doesn't stop us from getting the Howmets into town and other people. Now, we won't get the people who are touchy about that. We won't get them. We have to get somebody else. We won't get the people who are interested in the highest test scores for their children. We won't get them. They might still put a business here, but live in another town. And if they put a business here, we will get the business tax money, which will be very profitable, and it will provide jobs to the people that do live in the town. So let's put the apple back up, Dave, until we get to the final credits, and leave it up there if you can hear me. So I'm asking you, teachers, educators, administrators, to listen to the people and help the people, as I did in 2006, that are trying to get more additional, profitable, recurring tax money into the town to benefit you, your educational system, the students, the administrators, the teachers, the union members. Come on. Get up and start pounding for that. The PTOs, be more active, get involved. Don't say that's a political issue, we're letting somebody else handle that, because you end up, as you are now, holding the bag. So that's my apple for you teachers, educators, and anybody else in the education part of our town, excepting the private schools, which I don't discuss that. These are public schools. So now we're sitting at a position where the Board of Education and the Board of School Board of Gilbert are going to meet on Monday night. If you're watching the repeat, it was last Monday, but you know, as of this tonight, it's going to be this Monday. They're going to lock themselves up at 7 p.m. in Town Hall, P. Francis Hicks room, and they're going to try to come up with a heads of agreement, so they can come up with a decision as to whether we move 7th and 8th to Gilbert, or over time we move Gilbert to 7th Pearson. To me, it's a no-brainer. Each group has its own reasons. There's a lot of misinformation floating around. I've heard it myself. People aren't always there to defend their positions at these meetings. That would help too. So we got to kind of do what I suggested to them. They got to lock themselves up, and they got to lock the door, and they got to stay there until they come up with an agreement. Because we don't have much more time. We need a decision so we can resolve all the problems and get the job done by September of next school year, when we might or might not get hit with the $1.6 million drop in revenue from the federal government and the state government, and maybe even more, maybe less. But we can't gamble like that. You talk about for the children. Of course, you're going to gamble with the children's education. What you got to do is take an evolutionary approach. Take a step now, plan another step for the future, and evolve towards whatever it is you want 20 years or 10 years from now. But we got so much on our plate now, and this moving 7th and 8th to Gilbert is so obvious a solution. I mean, the other schools are asking for $30 million to fix them up. There are people in the minority of the Democratic Party who would like to see a whole brand new K-8 school system. K through 12 school system, preferably built on the 600 acres now owned by the developers, if we can take it away from them for tax reasons or something like that. I hear those rumors floating around. So let's get with it. Pay attention. Don't let anybody tell you, especially you and the unions, that this is a political problem. It's not. It's a business problem. And you can help. Find out what's going on and get involved. And then you will have success for yourselves, for the town, for the students, and for the new people and businesses that we're trying to recruit to our town. So now I'm going to fill out the rest of the hour with this apple and the final credits. I thank you for listening. Tell your friends. If anybody wants a copy of this to show it to any of their groups, senior citizens or unions or anything, I will give you a copy. Now, there will be, in the next few weeks, people writing to the newspapers. See, I find it hard when somebody says they gave part of their selectman's salary over a few years, which many selectmen do, to the Pearson School. But on the other hand, we're obstructive in trying to get the major money into town needed by the Pearson School. Doesn't make any sense to me. I read that in the paper last week. So I know what's going on here. I'm telling you. And if you don't believe me, find out for yourself. Get out there like I did and talk to people. Get all sides of the story. And don't just leave it up to the leaders. We're kind of in the same position as the federal government right now. People are challenging these leaders at the federal, state, and the local level. Thank you very much.